well, we've been here for 30 years, you've granted us for 10, why are you asking this question? What do you want to know? And again, it was just great to like, oh, maybe we shouldn't ask the same questions just because we've always asked the same questions.
Yeah. Hello. It's Holly Rustick here with Grant Writing and Funding, and I'm here to help you grow capacity, increase funding, and to advance the mission of your nonprofit or your freelance grant writing business. And to help me do that today, I have Tammy Tilzey from Foundant Technologies. Hey, Tammy, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, and I'm so excited because you're actually back on the show. So it's been a while. It's been more than a year now, I believe. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to have you back on and to hear all that we're going to be talking about, the cool things that Foundant Technologies is doing. So if you're like, Foundant, what? We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about something really fun, which is looking at grant makers from the nonprofit's perspective, right? So you've done a lot of research on this, having grant makers and nonprofits in the same room together and on panels and talking about like, how do we approach this whole grant thing a little bit better? Because it's changing, the landscape is changing, and you guys are like the forerunners in front of that. So I love that. And we're gonna talk about the nonprofit consulting conference a little bit, but yeah, so we all want to talk about today. So thank you again for coming on. And you're the relationship manager for Foundant Technologies. So I love it. You do so great at developing relationships with folks. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, and I can't wait to get into it today with you.
Yes, it's almost not work building relationships, because I just get out and get to meet people like yourself and just talk, right? You know, that's really like half an hour or so in the green room, like just chatting about different things and like different networking things that are going on. So I love it. But yeah, so you've been, so let's just talk about, because people might still be like, what is Foundant Technologies? I've heard you mention it before, Holly, but like, what is it? So can you just talk about it a little bit before we get into the content today and find out about the whole, what do we need from founders and or from funding sources and from grant makers today? Yes. Let me start out with who Foundant is. And we get called a lot of things frosting related, like fondant. A lot. So I wanted to start out with Foundant, had foundations and grants and kind of pushed it together. That's where the Foundant name came from. So that's why you say Foundant. But
you know, I didn't know that. I actually did not know that. I was always
a piece of trivia. I didn't know for a long time either, you know.
I'm like, okay, was it someone's last name? Because it is kind of a strange word, but now I get it. It is a unique word on purpose. That was cool.
Back in 2006 or so, we came out with a product for funders and grant lifecycle manager. And so over those years, we've really built a great set of solutions for community foundations, family foundations, private foundations, grant makers, and also those that really Giving Circles, other people that really fund nonprofits. So we have software that helps that application, as well as the application process, as well as the follow-up reports, evaluation of grants, and all of the tracking the grant makers need to do. So we have that. That's what we started with. But back when I joined Foundant, they were wondering, okay, we try to make our applicant interface as easy as possible and very easy to use, and think of the nonprofits as they are interacting, but is there more that we could do for nonprofits? And that's where Grant Hub was born from, nonprofits also need to track all of their deadlines, regardless of what funder, whether the funder uses our software or not, right? You know, so some of them don't send out reminders. All of these things, they need to find potential funders, and they need to track when their reports are due and give spend down and all these other challenges. So we brought to market Grant Hub, and over the years that I've been with Foundant, and even to this last month, we introduced Grant Hub Pro, which includes not just pre-award grant management, but more of that post-award spend down expense, revenue tracking. Is it restricted? Is it, for general operating, and all of that, whether you need to send in reimbursement grants, matching grants, all of that tracking. So again, trying to help solve more challenges. So that's where Foundant has come from. And so we have this unique position of having a lot of clients that are funders and a lot of clients that are nonprofits, and really looking at what can we do with this unique opportunity. And that's where I threw this idea by you of like, can we talk about our reverse panels? I'm so excited to get into that topic.
I love that. I love that history. Thank you for sharing, because it's so cool. Like, I didn't know how that's on. So, but that also leads into the conversation we're having today. You guys are so true to that mission and the values of how even your name was created, that we're talking about that today. You know what I mean? The mixture of foundations and grants. Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So I love that. And I love that perspective from like nonprofits too, and being able to access something where they're like, okay, we also need grants. We need to figure out how to handle this grant process, because the grant process can get so messy with when do I submit? When are the reminders? You know, how do I handle this post award? So I'm really glad that you guys now in your 2.0 grant hub, like, you know, it's really also looking at let's look at the full cycle, right? Like not just the pre-cycle, but there's definitely a post-cycle that gets messy to be handled, right?
Right.
I've been there.
You have different people that handle that, and that's fine. But having everybody use a central system will help you just be that much faster, where you know all the data so that you can work on the report, or you know, you're just more in sync with your grant team from the accounting, from programs, tracking, you know, what the grant is funding and all of that. So it's very
I love that. Yeah. And the other thing, you know, my coach, sorry.
More people to build relationships with.
Yes. So you're like right on my lane. But I love that too, because one thing my coach has really been drilling into me this year too is processes over people. And, you know, as far as like aligning your systems and all of that. And that just made me think of that. Like when you talked about like, yeah, sure, might have different people that do certain things, but just relying on a person's knowledge of, you know, their experience of maybe they have their own system, but what happens when that person leaves? What happens if they have transition time? Like things happen all of the time. And then you're going to be losing so much of your system because you don't have one. That person had one, right? So it's like really thinking about processes, and no matter who the person is, they can step in and learn that. But then it's always, you don't have to keep replicating or learn a new thing because it's the same thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, so I really like that approach, and I'm really into streamlined systems. And that's so anyways, I just wanted to say that on the side, because I do think that's really an important thing that a lot of people think, well, do I need that? I have this person that does that. Unless they're using a system that somebody else can easily walk in and learn, that's what you need to have, right? You need to have that. Otherwise, yeah, you might have that person that has their own system and way of doing that, but what happens when that person leaves, right? So, yeah.
And not only that, but have you ever been asked from your executive team, how are things going? Where are things going? How many grants do you think we're going to get? How many grants have you already got? Like, how much of your time is spent just answering questions that people could get at themselves if you had a system that had, hey, just click on your dashboard, it'll tell you where we are. Oh, have we applied to that funder? Just click on that funder, you'll see if we have, right? You know, I mean, more of this organization's system that's a little bit more self-serve, or at least it helps you create those reports with just a couple clicks, so that you're not spending hours trying to pull together your stickies and your whiteboard and, okay, I'm applying to 12 grants this month, right? You know, and how many did I win the previous month? Yeah, all of that stuff is just, like you said, streamline, save you time, make you look better, right?
Yes.
Well, based on history, I could see I get this percentage win. So
Right.
if I had this many more funders, if they're a good match, maybe we could project this. You know, and you could be involved in more strategic decisions and discussions. It really, it it raises everybody up in the organization and takes off those menial tasks, right?
It does. I love the saving time because I always think of like writing grants, right? A lot of you guys listening out there, you're writing grants. And the thing is when you win a grant, it's exciting. It's for sure, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I won this grant. You think you're never going to forget it. Oh, guess what? Next year, you're going to be like, how much was that? Was that last year? Was that 3 years ago? And then you have like a deadline to get a grant in, and they're asking you for a history of your grant awards. And if you have to, like you said, figure out where that document is, that file, when was that, pulling that together, that takes time. And the other thing too is you might forget something that you won that you could really talk about in a grant proposal that would set you up with credibility. Maybe it was a grant that was super aligned and similar, same amount, or from the same funding source. And if you mention that in a grant, yeah, we've also won this grant before, blah, 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 that speaks volumes. That scores more points. You know what I mean? But if you forget about that and you don't talk about it, like you could lose points on something that you've already you have a portfolio, but you just don't know it. You're not looking.
Yes.
So, I love that.
Because the more you show that you treat the stewardship of the money very seriously, and that you enter it into a system, you have a system that supports your processes. We know how we do that. The funder's going to be like, oh, these guys know their stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have these are somebody that we want to fund, right? They're stewards of the money. And that's, again, something that we really enjoy helping and partnering with a nonprofit and the grant program. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that even speaks to I think Bob Proctor, somebody talks about that too, what you measure grows, right? So if you're not really paying attention to it, even with your own bank account, let's say you're taking care of your money, it's easier to then create more savings and understand your flow and all of that. If you're kind of like, I'm just running away from it, I don't want to look at it, not really going to grow. And it's not like nonprofits are doing that, but they're so busy trying to raise the money that they don't even really understand maybe what monies they've had curated or what's happened, right? So it's kind of like what you pay attention to, it does, what you measure grows. So it's just, this is a way of being financially responsible. I really believe with the money that you do secure with grants, to put it into a system, to really understand it, to be able to be on top of it. Like you said, well, what percentage did we even win in grants last year? What areas do we need to focus on? This can be those, so I love that Grant Hub 2.0. So I'm calling it, it's really helping that process. And I know that might sound a little woo-woo, but I think that process is so important, right? For people to measure all of these things. And like you said, to save time, to be able to go click, what was that? Click, what was that, right? Whatever that question is, how many grants did you win? Did you submit to that funding source before, right? All of the things, the grant makers, which ones are out there, because you also do grant research as well to find grant sources, right? To find grant funding sources. So that's really important too, when you're doing that, what are new relationships I can build with who, right? So looking for those grant makers. So
yes. Yeah. And looking at funded similar organizations, looking at it from another angle. That's one kind of hidden part of our, not too many people know, but it's, I don't know why we don't have it on our dashboard. Go in and say, okay, this organization's similar to ours, who gave them money, right?
Oh, I like that. That's good.
They're in a different state. Well, just looking at the types of funders, that brings up a whole bunch of other ideas, right? And you can just get ideas from them, or if, hey, the same funder may fund you too, right?
Yeah, so good. So I'm so excited. Definitely a great launch you guys have going on right now. We're happy to support it because these are resources that our listeners are looking for, how to do grant research and find grant makers, how to, actually do grant management, all of the things that you guys have developed for your software. So you guys are interested, definitely check it out. We'll have all of the links in the show notes to see the Grant Hub 2.0. But also we wanted to talk about then our topic today. We have lots of good gems out there for you guys in that. So what we want to talk about though is looking at it from the perspective then is, here's the foundations or the grant makers, they kind of feel like over there, right? Kind of like abstract. And then we have the nonprofits who are like, okay, I want to reach them. A lot of times though, there's no solicitations, or, there's like a gatekeeper there that even if it's not like a real gatekeeper, it feels like one metaphorically, because they feel so separated. So you guys have done a lot of work on bringing these two people together, right? And I love that, because this is where we need to have more conversations, right? Because it is about relationships. And a lot of times I think nonprofits kind of forget that. They kind of think it's about just asking for money. And we kind of need to break that down, I think, a little bit, right? So let's hear, like, what have you found out from bringing these two sources together, grant makers and nonprofits that are seeking grants, and how are they talking these days?
This is great. So if you've ever been at these funder panels where they have 4 or 5 different funders and big audience of nonprofits asking them, how do I work with funders, and how do I ask additional questions? Well, first read this, right? All these things that keep coming out of how you could stay in your lane and line and do things exactly this way to make it easy on funders. Well, what if funders really knew what it was like on the other side? And so I've been wanting to do this forever. And at our organization, I have a peer who handles the funders, and I keep on telling let's do this. I think funders would love to hear what it's like, what nonprofits wish they knew. And so pulled together on a webinar, and we've been doing it with regional funder trainings. We'll put together a panel of 4 or 5 nonprofit, real experienced grant professionals that have been there, done it. Maybe they're consultants and have done it several different types of organizations. Maybe they're an executive director that writes grants, also all different types. And then we ask them, start the discussion. All right, what type of barriers in the application process, or what things do you get excited about when you see, and that okay, this is going to be good, I know what to expect, right? Or what is that? And then the conversation just starts going. And of course, what do you hate the most? What are you gonna say, Holly? Character, right? So that always comes up, right? Why forms have character counts? So why do you give me such, tell me your organization history in 100 characters or whatever, right? This crazy stuff. And to actually have that follow-up question and discussion, and to see these nonprofit professionals being vulnerable. Because a lot of times when you do this regionally, they're talking to their funders and they're critiquing. Right? But they're all just professionals because they learned how to do this, right? So they're constructive feedback. And then the thing that really excites me, and I know that maybe now's the time, but a lot of funders are looking to make it easier for nonprofits. They're trying to be, trust-based philanthropy is coming up. How do we be more equitable across? How do we make it easy? And sometimes they do things like, well, we always gave them a 2-page LOI. Let's cut it down to 1. That will make it easier, right? Like you said, you got it.
Like, that.
Take the whole thing, because I want you to be 2 pages. Now I got to, and they're like, see, I made it easy for you. And it's just so exciting to see these realizations of like, no, that wasn't easier, right? How about give them a question and then say, in the parentheses, we're expecting 2 paragraphs here, but give them 10,000 characters. That way, if they needed 3 paragraphs to really tell it, but you're telling them what you expect. Because sometimes when you don't tell them what to expect, they're like, oh my gosh, they have 10,000, I better write because everybody else is using that space. And you think, all of these assumptions are going back and forth. And so to me, I just get chills as I watch these webinar full of funders taking notes, and they're going to go change their application. And knowing that this panel affected hundreds and hundreds of nonprofits' experience, it's going to be better now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just really exciting, those panels.
I love that so much because that's such a flip, right? So I love just looking at that because it is in the past, what are you going to hear from nonprofits ask funding sources, right? They're going to be saying things like exactly like, well, how do I make it easier to approach you? How do you like all of the things? But if you say, well, funding sources, let's listen to nonprofits because they make a lot of assumptions like, oh, let's just, make it like videos now. And whether or not that could be really difficult, for certain organizations to submit videos, right? Maybe they're not like comfortable in front of a camera, right? So it's like, or the quality isn't as good. So it's just like how, I don't know. It's just, I think having these conversations and being like, what is it? Yeah. How can we make it together?
That question exactly came up because that's really hot right now. People want to know, well, let's make it easier. Let's do a video application. And then, with just a few questions, but then they end up like do a video and the question, right?
Yes.
They were, it was again, just fun to ask the questions, step back and watch the questions and follow-up questions, go back. It's like, well, if it really was easier, if it really is just a phone and a recording, right?
Yeah.
And I could just do this, or if it has to be the executive director, if it has to be this, now we're starting to really make it much more complicated than it was. And you're thinking you're making it easier.
Yeah.
Right?
Because now you have production and then you have like, you still have to hit criteria in your video, I imagine, right? So then it's like also like some people are more long-winded, some people are short. Like, how do you like really
Right.
that, right?
Yeah, and you're like, well, then it doesn't have to be proficiency in writing the English language, and so you think you'd be, but you've got to be careful with setting expectations, and that's what came out of that discussion of how would you then use videos, and it came up in the reports too. That's another area that we drilled into, and it was just in my mind hilarious. I'm sure nobody else was entertained. Find out that everybody's asking for all this data. Like when you want on your follow-up reports, well, tell us, how you're doing, what, how the spend down is going, and how many people you've served, and all these things that were in the plan of the grant application. And all the funders are going, we just want a picture and we want a little video that we can share with our board of like, see what our grants are doing. I'm like, well, did you ask for that?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you want both, kind of ask for both, or say this is optional, but if you have a couple in your, library that you could just send along, we'd love to show this. And then of course the nonprofits want to make it easier for the funders to know the impact they're having. And then, those videos oftentimes are already made, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. So what are the other themes that came out that were kind of common? Like you have video, character count, like what are other kind of things that you hear from nonprofits that are like, hey.
Well, it's funny because as I've sat through a ton of nonprofit, the grant training, what's the question that everybody kind of dreads? And maybe it's different for everybody, but the sustainability one always comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I don't know, they're asking you for money. So,
and if you don't fund me, I'm gonna find somebody who funds me. That's what I'm saying. But like, it's funny to hear the laughter and the jokes of like, well, really, like, well, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
Are you looking for, are we a stable organization? Well, we've been here for 30 years. You've granted us for 10. Why are you asking this question? What do you want to know? Right?
Yeah.
What are you trying to get at? And, so because these are the types of answers we're going to give. Is that what you're looking for? And again, it was just great to like, oh, maybe we shouldn't ask the same questions just because we've always asked the same question.
Yes, I love that.
And so that's, those things coming out, the really I could see was going to change a lot of grant application was really it's just exciting to see. Mm-hmm. And another one along that line of questions was, I don't understand when the questions are so similar. That's really frustrating. Mm-hmm. Like, should I just say, see the answer to question 3? Or, you know what, looking for those, you know, really giving more detail on why is this similar? Tell us why it's different than the question you just asked, right?
Right.
I think the number one thing that came out also is being able to see the full application before you start. Like if you're even deciding whether you're going to apply or not, you see all. There's no
Like for online applications, yeah, you can only see like the first 3, and then you got to like spend all this time, and you get to the end, you're like, maybe this isn't a good fit, but I just wasted all this time.
Right, because there's extra questions that pop up, and you didn't have time to prepare for them, right? And all these things with some of those. So that came out, but since they were our clients, our grant maker software has that capability. So there were a lot that says, well, this is normally frustrating, but if you're using Foundant's grant maker software, they, you know, have already counted some of those challenges, like we save. So partial work is saved every 15, minutes or something. So you don't lose things when you close the application, and some of those painful things were already, everybody used our software, right? No.
Yeah.
So they still
Grant Hub 2.0. But I love that so much. Yeah. So looking at these different things, and it's so good. Why are we asking the same questions just because we always ask them? And I see that happen a lot, right? I even see that, nonprofits kind of replicate that, doing the same events every year. And it's like, do they really analyze? Is that really working in our favor, right? Is that really, so I love that kind of like, oh, let's have this, but hearing it from the other perspective is so important, because if you're just sitting on a board, and because, I sit on a board of directors, I've sat on a lot of board of directors, and we've put out a lot of grants before too, and opportunities. And it's really about that. We need to really figure out what we're asking. Like, if we're having people apply for grants, and understand why it's important to us, and why we need to have certain information. So I love that, looking at that, because that's a sustainability question. And if you guys aren't familiar with it, most of you are, but if you're not, it's how are you going to keep sustaining this program after this grant funding has ended, right?
Well, you to just my funding, and we're like, yeah.
People are saying, how do I do that, Holly? And I'm like, here we go. Because it's building a business plan. Your grant is a business plan, and you kind of do have to think about that in a way, but you could position it a little differently too. Like you were talking about, how long have you been around? But at the same point, if you're totally new, we are looking at having more equitable grants. You don't want to, you don't have maybe that much of a track record. So how are you going to showcase that? So there's some conversation to have, and it's more about that thought process about what do they really want. Does the program even need to continue? That's the other thing. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah. This problem, it's just a spot thing. We're done asking for money. So yeah.
It's just for a 1-year thing. We're building the curriculum. When it's done, we don't need more money. Then we're going to move on and ask for money for, then implementing the curriculum or whatever. It's going to be a different program, right? So yeah, it's interesting to see that from funding sources. So the other thing I wanted to know, did AI get brought up at your panel so far?
Not yet. It's definitely brought up in the circles of our grant. Well, actually, it has been brought up, and not during the panel.
Okay.
And so I imagine it will. We have
Yes.
coming up soon, but the grant seekers, the nonprofits are kind of ahead of the game in my mind of, how can I use it? How could I use it? How do I cite if I used it? How do I use it appropriately?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it could be a powerful tool. Does it help you take something down from 550 characters to 500 characters? That may be a good use of it, right?
It does. Just saying. You still got to read it though to make sure it took out the right words and not the wrong words, right? So yeah.
Or something that I always have problems with. What's a clever name for a program? Like if you did a big program description, we're helping kids do this. What's a snappy name for it?
I love that. That's a great way to use it.
You gotta be careful with AI about what you put into it if it's not your content and it gets shared. Everything you feed it is now public, right? But if it's just something on your website that's the description of your program, what are some snappy names, what's a summary, those types of things. Looking forward to how that can also help or, be integrated into our software as that we figure out what challenges it's best in.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm wondering too, like when we're going to see the impact on the funding source side or on the foundation side, right? So like, and I think I mentioned this before in the podcast a while ago when ChatGPT was just getting mainstream. But one of the things that I found, and I was listening to on NPR, and it was really interesting. They said that one of their science, so it's kind of different, but I think it aligns, right? One of their science fiction is a publishing house actually had to shut down because they got like temporarily until they figured this out because they were getting so many submissions. Like they said, normally they would get like 10, science fiction book like submissions, right? Manuscript submissions. And they were getting like 10, like they usually get 10 per day. They were getting like 100 to 200 a day because all of a sudden people were using AI just to write books.
Right.
Yeah. And I was thinking like, for me, that just because I'm a grant writer, and I was like, right away, I was like, I know people are going to be using it to write grants. I think they're a little bit slower to some, but my thought was on the other side, the foundation side. What happens? Because, like this publishing house, they only have certain capacity to review, they have a criteria. They don't have the manpower or the women power to review 100 to 200 manuscripts, a day. Like they just don't. So they had to shut down until they figured out how they could even do that with this new demand and just increase or influx, right? Because they don't want to charge either for people to submit, just like grants. You're not going to charge a fee, to submit a grant, you know what I mean? So like, have you heard anything from the foundation side? Like we're getting an influx of grants or something like that, or any?
Not yet.
Interesting.
Still like how do we find more applicants? Heard
that.
Okay. And I'm like sending them out to my sources. I'm like, oh, fire, looking for more applicants. But that's definitely the possibility of using AI. But you've got to be really careful and responsible about that too.
So careful. Yeah.
You don't reinforce biases, and I mean, you've got to be very careful with how to use it. So it's exciting.
Yeah. So don't just go use AI, you guys, as that example and write your grants. You still have to look it over. I have seen people toying with it. I've toyed with it for some grant writing. Definitely some support it can help you with, but I think learning how to do it. And we just had Philip Dang from Grantable on talking about AI last week on the podcast about that too. So just a little drop there, but I know a lot of people, that's the buzz right now is grant writers talking about AI and how to use it. And is it something we can use in our grant writing? And I'm just wondering, I wonder how the impact, because in my mind, I was like, well, if there is like another like influx of grants coming into funding sources, they will have, just like that publishing house, to kind of like sit back and say, does our evaluation change? Are the questions that we ask changed? Because if anyone can just put something in and get AI to write it, is that okay then? Or is it not? Like, you know what I mean? I think these are real ethical questions that need to be brought up with the foundations as well, right? So would love to hear that.
Yeah. Grant writer, grant professional out of business, because how do you find the right funders? You can search for a list of funders, finding the good match, coming up with the programs. Hopefully it just makes everything better. And we just work 40-hour weeks, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe 32. Yeah,
4 days work week. Yeah.
And nobody knows that we got a little, AI going on, and we take Fridays off, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it just makes everything better, but we've got to guide it that way for sure.
Yeah, and I like that whole thing of still, I love the foundations that are working with you and going to these panels and being vulnerable and not trying to stay in that power position. That really speaks a lot to the people that are working with you and the foundations that you guys have in Foundant. It really does. So just shout out applause to you guys on that and attracting those types of people, because this is how we're going to reshape and create more equity in the grant writing space, in the nonprofit space, right? Because we do want to do that. We don't want to just keep funding certain programs that help a certain target population. You know, it needs to be more equitable. So yeah, I love that you're doing this to really help the entire landscape and the way the future is moving with grant writing. So yay. Yes. So yes. All right. So as we kind of wrap up from this, but before we go today, I did want to give a big shout out to you guys for being the title sponsor of the Nonprofit Consulting Conference coming up very soon, August 23rd and 24th. 2-day full virtual conference. It is going to be amazing, back to back with speakers, networking sessions. The sponsors are doing some amazing things with the digital swag bags. People are going to walk away with so much resources. And this is definitely for you if you're thinking about becoming a nonprofit consultant or growing your nonprofit consultancy as well. So if you want to serve nonprofits, maybe you do accounting with them, grant writing with them, right? Social media marketing with them. There's so many different things that you can do to serve the fastest growing industry in the United States, and that's the nonprofit industry. So yeah, step up. So anything you have to say about the Nonprofit Consulting Conference coming up?
We love to sponsor. This is the second year we sponsored it, second year that it is. We have heard so much from the clients that attended it of how transformational it was, right? To really network with other people that are building the same thing, hear from great experts that have done it, did it, have great advice to share. And it's not about how to write a grant, it's like how to build a business. It's build things that scare you and you think you should already know and you don't. Or you maybe can learn how to do it better. I have yet to meet the perfect person that can do all of it, right? So maybe this is your strength, but how to change your pricing, how to bundle things, and it really helps you build your business. Love it.
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah, we're definitely excited. I mean, like you said, it's anywhere from like how to start an email list, how to grow an email list, to even Sean Kosofsky is going to be there talking about how he went from part-time to full-time consultant. So his journey, and a lot of sharing story as well, which I think is really important. And we learn a lot through that. So, and I'll be there talking as well. So about how to do value-based pricing and all the fun things. So yeah, definitely the theme this year is how to know when to grow your nonprofit consultancy business. So it's going to be a lot of fun to say, okay, these are ways where you can start and how you can grow. So a little bit for everybody. But thank you so much for being our second year title sponsor. We're super excited because of the work that you do and just where you guys your values come from. I think it just speaks a volume. And I love that I now know how you got your name.
It'll start to be a Jeopardy question, I'm sure.
Awesome. So where can people find out more about Foundant, more about Grant Hub, all of the things that you guys are doing? And then I'll also share in the show notes, but just for people listening that might be out there walking or running or cooking or driving, where can they find you?
Yes, foundant.com, and that's FOUNDANT.com. And then just look under solutions. We have Nonprofit Core for all of your database needs, accounting, CRM, fundraising, grants, and then Grant Hub Pro.
Love it. You guys can get demos for all of that. Definitely check it out. You get free demos. You can see a lot of the different webinars. I've even done a webinar with you guys.
Webinars. Yeah, sign up for those, and then even if you're not needing a solution right now, just hang out in our community.
Love it. Well, thank you so much again, Tammy, for coming back on. I'm super excited. I'll see you next month at the Nonprofit Consulting Conference. So have a wonderful day. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.